Good afternoon and welcome to the AgrAbility webinar series. My name is Paul Jones. I manage the Breaking New Ground Resource Center, which is the lead organization in the National AgrAbility Project that's housed at the Breaking New Ground Resource Center at Purdue University. Our topic today deals with outreach to migrant and seasonal farm workers, specifically what different AgrAbility projects are doing around the country in that area. Many of you that are joining us today are not AgrAbility staff members, so I wanted to give just a little background on AgrAbility and the services that we provide. AgrAbility is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and our main focus is on helping farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural workers that have disabilities. Now, the term disabilities may be a question mark for some of you because perhaps you don't deal with things like spinal cord injuries or amputations. However, AgrAbility does focus on things like ergonomic issues, back impairments, other types of orthopedic issues that you may be dealing with when you talk about farm workers, migrant seasonal farm workers. Each AgrAbility project is a partnership between a land-grant university such as Purdue or University of California at Davis and at least one nonprofit disability organization. It could be the Arthritis Foundation, it could be Goodwill, Easter Seals, or some other organization. Currently, there are 23 AgrAbility projects that cover 25 states in the U.S. If you're interested in finding out more about AgrAbility and also in looking at some of the past webinars that we've had in this series, feel free to check out our newly remodeled website at www.agrability.org. Just a few basic instructions for the webinar today. Of course, you need speakers or headphones to participate in the audio portion of the webinar. You may want to check the meeting menu, look at Manage My Settings, and check your connection speed. Dial-up is not recommended for this webinar. At the end of the presentation, we will have an 800 number if you'd like to ask questions, but also you may type in questions at any time during the webinar in the chat window, which is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in the smaller box and send with the arrow and it should appear. We will not be answering questions during the webinar itself, but we will save all of those until the question and answer period at the end. Again, if you have problems, technical issues, feel free to use that chat window, or you can also email raz@purdue.edu. At the end of the webinar, we'll have 4 quick survey questions just to measure your feedback about the webinar. That shouldn't take more than a couple minutes. And also, the session is being recorded and will be archived on agrability.org under the online training link. Our outline today will be focusing on 3 main areas. One is a fotonovela that it was designed specifically for migrant seasonal farm workers that relates to arthritis. Then the California AgrAbility Project will be talking about some of their outreach activities and strategies. And then we'll follow up with a brief presentation about some of the activities that the Missouri AgrAbility Project has been engaged in recently. Just a quick background on the Fotonovela project. Back in the 1980s, Breaking New Ground at Purdue began developing some arthritis and agriculture publications. Eventually, in 2004, we updated those publications into one that's currently known as Arthritis and Agriculture, and you can find that in PDF form on our website. In 2007, we joined the California AgrAbility Project to work on producing a Spanish version that dealt with arthritis and agriculture. Now, some of the partnering organizations involved with that group: Indiana AgrAbility, again, Breaking New Ground at Purdue, the Arthritis Foundation here in Indiana, and also Transition Resources Corporation. Then in California, the AgrAbility Project included not only the University of California at Davis, but also the Arthritis Foundation that they're partnering with in California. Finally, the Western Center for Agricultural Safety and Health at UC Davis also participated in the process. In developing it, we spent a lot of time in discussions, conference calls, talking about what type of format, whether we would simply translate the old agriculture brochure or whether we'd do something different like this novella. We worked on developing a script after we decided on the novella, the storyline, and then finally we passed it to California AgrAbility to work mostly on the translation and the editing for us. And then finally the novella was produced in its current form in 2010. So I want to turn it over to Amber Wolf of the Arthritis Foundation here in Indiana to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the novella, and then we'll hear from California. We had a little technical problem with Amber's camera, so she's going to be using my computer here in just a second.
All right, thanks, Paul. Sorry we had a few technical difficulties on my printer or on my computer, and it wasn't going to allow me to use the camera. So as Paul said, my name is Amber Wolf, and I am the AgrAbility Project Coordinator for the Arthritis Foundation Indiana chapter, and we are both a partner with the National Project and with the State Project. Thanks, Cliff. I'm going to go through and tell you about the Spanish fotonovela concerning the format and the storyline. Paul has already taken you through the development and the production that started in 2007, and we managed to get that first print edition in early 2010 of this year. As of this point, the edition that came out in 2010 has been very well received, and we're going to run you through that format and storyline of how you can use it in your own areas, and then what exactly the novella is. You. It's not letting me. There we go. Fotonovelas are generally an acceptable means of written or visual communication in the Latino communities. They are usually better than fact sheets or informational brochures because they're very easy to follow, they're very easy for them to share with their family members, and they can relate more to the pictures and the storylines rather than relating to actual paragraphs or written words. Many of the second and third generation family members in the Latino communities will often find their healthcare information at health fairs or clinics, and then they'll take it back to share it with their older family members. And the novella, we have found, is a great way to be able to do that. Fotonovelas are also very helpful for conveying this healthcare information and the messages to areas of low literacy because it focuses more on the storyboard pictures that they can relate to more than the text. The novella that we're going to talk with you about today comes in a very similar format to some that you may have seen before. It is a full 24-page color booklet. It includes 69 photographs as well as 2 diagrams on arthritis and the joints that are affected. And you'll see examples of each of those pages in the next few slides. The fotonovela that we have produced includes the following characters. We start out with Rosa, who is an older woman that has been affected by arthritis, and we'll go through her story with her. Marcella is the college-age woman in the family, as well as Sarah, who are sitting and talking with Rosa and trying to help her through her medical and her difficulties and her pain. We also have Angelo, who is an older man in the family, and Jose, as well as a few other children and a few minor characters in the storyline, and you'll see those in the pictures that follow. In scene 1 of the novella, we see the 3 women, Rosa, Marcella, and Sarah, as they sit around the table and they're getting ready for a barbecue later in the day, and they're helping by chopping the vegetables. Well, it starts to come out that Rosa's hands are hurting her. She's been a vineyard worker for years, and she's starting to have some pain in her hands as she does even simple tasks like peeling the vegetables and cutting tomatoes for the barbecue. Marcella, who has been to a health fair recently, has picked up information on arthritis, and she decides that she's going to share that because she thinks the symptoms that she read about sound very similar to what Rosa is describing to her. So Marcella and Sarah convince Rosa that she needs to see her doctor about possibly getting a diagnosis of arthritis. In scene 2, the ladies have now moved outside to where the men are cooking on the grill, and they are getting ready for the barbecue as well. And Angelo goes to pick up his daughter because she wants to play with him, and exclaims that he's having some back pain, and he just can't pick her up because it pains him to be able to do that. He's been a dairy worker for over 20 years, so now he's exhibiting some of the classic pains that we see that go along with that occupation, which would be pain in his knees and pain in his back as well. In the next scene, we see that Angelo has decided to go to the doctor's office. He is going to look for an accurate diagnosis of his pain. And he's seen by a nurse practitioner who runs his tests and talks to him about his pain, asks him about how it's affecting his daily life and what type of pain he's experiencing. And then several days later, throughout this novella, it shows that he is waiting and his test results come back. He has been diagnosed with osteoarthritis in his knees, which again is common for dairy workers. The nurse practitioner then talks to him about some of the modifications that he can make around the home, as well as some alternative methods of working to help manage his pain without lessening his productivity on the job or without lessening his pride by not being able to play and enjoy his free time with his family. Several weeks later, we see the same family also in the backyard, and we see them playing, and it looks like they're a little bit more active at this point in time. They're playing soccer, they're enjoying being together, and it does state that even though Angelo still is experiencing his joint pain at times, it's much better now that he has seen a doctor, he's following through with his recommendations, and he's managing his pain, not only with some use of medications, but also with some general everyday modifications that have made it better for his lifestyle. So that takes you through the storyline of what's happening in the novella, and it obviously goes through a few other screens and slides that show the type of experience they would have in the doctor's office and the general timeline of how things would work. Other information that's also included in the end of the fotonovela is a list of sources of information where people can ask for more help, ask if they have a clarification on some sort of question, or find out what they need to be doing regarding their joint pain. They can contact the Arthritis Foundation, which has Spanish assistance through a 1-800 toll-free phone line, a website, and an email. We also have contact information listed for the National AgrAbility Project, the California AgrAbility Project, and the National Center for Farm Worker Health. At the end of the novella, after the sources of information page, we also include pages on tips for controlling arthritis. It goes along with 12 different tips that are also associated with pictures, as well as 5 keys to a general healthy lifestyle, also with pictures that can allow them to relate to these types and tips. How you can obtain the fotonovela and how you can use it in your own programs is either by ordering it off of our Arthritis and Agriculture website, and you can visit that at arthritis-ag.org. There's an order form that you can easily print and send back to us, or you can visit the agrability.org website as well. You can also call or email me directly at my toll-free line or through my email, and I'll be sure to get an order form out to you as well. The prices, as you can see, are listed. It depends on how many copies you think you can personally need, and shipping is not included in that. At this point, we have already depleted our first order of our fotonovelas, but we are going to be printing a second order. They have been extremely well received, and we hope that you will also find a way to utilize them in your own communities and in your own work. And I believe at this point, I am going to pass it over to Martha and her group at California AgrAbility so they can explain to you how they work with their outreach in the migrant and seasonal farm worker populations. Let me shut you.
And your audio.
In the audio? Oh. Hi everybody, I think I'm on. I'm Martha Stiles, and I'm the director of the California AgrAbility program. Today in California we're going to have 3 speakers, including myself, Esmeralda Mondojano, and Crystal Martinez. We're going to be talking about why we use Spanish language materials and the communication and health literacy issues that we encounter working with migrant and seasonal farm workers, and some of the strategies that we use in reaching out to them and contacting them. Why should we produce Spanish language materials? One of the primary reasons is that Hispanics in the U.S. is one of the fastest growing subpopulations or populations throughout the country. At AgrAbility, producing Spanish language materials, we realize that communicating critical health care and rehabilitation information requires us producing and using materials in the language of our consumers. And this helps us and them to succeed in accomplishing their rehabilitation goals and getting back to farming. And thirdly, we need to provide the same level of service to our Spanish language consumers that our English language consumers receive. Between 1980 and the year 2000, the Latino or Hispanic population has almost doubled. One of the most rapidly growing demographic segments is the Latino or Hispanic populations in particularly rural and small town America. These are the farming communities where we work with AgrAbility as well as other AgrAbility states. We did a little bit of research on the influx of Spanish-speaking migrant and seasonal farm workers. Every state in the country actually does have an annual influx of ag workers that come in to work on our farms. In California, we have upwards of 1 million workers that come in each year. Texas has over 300,000. Georgia, 100,000. Michigan, 90,000. New York, 47,000, and on. These are just a few of the states that we looked up just to make a comparison of who gets a lot of folks coming in and working in agriculture, which actually speaks to the need for producing Spanish language material. And producing quality Spanish language material is a key. We use a lot of materials that other agencies, health and rehabilitation agencies, produce. We also hear some folks say, well, any Spanish language material is better than nothing, and we feel that that's absolutely wrong. We have run across a lot of poor quality material that is written in Spanish, and some of the information that has been given is just wrong, and it may do more harm than good, especially when we're talking about health and rehabilitation issues. When we're reviewing materials that are produced by others, we look for inaccurate information, especially if it deals with health and rehabilitation. Poor translations, we run into that. We run into inaccurate grammar and punctuation, especially either missed accents or misplaced accents on the words, which can actually change the entire meaning of a sentence and a message. One of the things that we run into frequently is materials that are produced at the inappropriate reading levels. Here at AgrAbility, we look at producing our own materials at between the 3rd and the 6th grade level because for the most part our farm workers have not achieved education higher than that. As Amber just spoke about, the materials that we produce or that we disseminate has got to be in a format that will be used and accepted by our audience. Fotonovelas is one of these, and it's very popular. It started in the mid-40s in Mexico and Europe, and it's used a lot in Mexico today for various topics. In the U.S. today, however, it's used primarily excuse me, to communicate health and safety messages for low literacy groups. When we're producing these materials, as we did with Purdue with the Fotonovela, what we have to ensure is that we look at the images that we include on each page, the activities that are being portrayed, and the venues that they are portrayed in. The images, the faces, the way people are dressed, their work venue or where they gather to do activities has got to be appropriate for the audience. The audience has to identify with what we're handing them or they won't read it. We also have to make sure that the activities and behaviors excuse me, are portraying the behavior that our message is promoting. And just lastly, the photographs are actually the better way to go versus hand drawings. A step that should never be skipped when you're producing your, whether it's English language or Spanish language or whatever language, it should be pre-tested with your audience. We pre-test the images, the activities, the background venues. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here. Excuse me, and especially the language that it's written in. We test for acceptability, which means can the audience identify with the people with the attire, with the occupation, with anything that's being portrayed? Is it a preferable way for them to receive information, like the fotonovela has proven to be? And is it understandable? Understandability. Are all the messages clear? Not just the language, but is the message that we're trying to get across clear? So pre-testing is really a must, and for the fotonovela, we actually conducted several pre-tests with our target audience in several venues in California. When we provide information, that is, hand people information that is written in their language, we realize that it's probably, especially given this population of migrant and seasonal farm workers, that it's probably the first step that this individual or this family is taking to address some health or rehabilitation need. This population is not necessarily one that will really seek out health and rehabilitation information, especially from strangers. We also have to realize that what we hand them is also likely to be passed on to family members, to co-workers and friends, so it has to be accurate, it has to be trustworthy information. And lastly, especially at one-time events like health fairs or festivals, where we may not see that person again, that what we give them is maybe the only communication that we ever have with them. So if we hand them a booklet about how to take care of themselves, for instance with the arthritis issues, we have to ensure that it's trustworthy information enough and that it communicates our message, because we're not going to be there to read it to them. And now to talk more on the communication and health literacy issues is Crystal Martinez.
Gracias, Marta. Buenas tardes a todos. Me llamo Cristal Martínez y soy una de las representantes bilingües aquí en el programa de California AgrAbility. Y hoy estaré hablando sobre cómo comunicarnos efectivamente y cómo prevenir mala comunicación con nuestros consumidores agrícolas. Maybe some of you did understand the message I was sharing with you, and many of you probably didn't. And this is something our consumers face on a day-to-day basis because they're not able to communicate effectively in English. So today I'll be talking to you about how to communicate effectively with your consumers and overcome miscommunication. So here at AgrAbility, we use plain language, and so plain language is communication that our consumers understand the first time they hear or read about it, and we also have to note that language that is plain to a set of readers may not be plain to others. And so our consumers benefit from plain language because by providing plain language, they are able to see information that is easy to read and understand in a simple format. So then they're able to find what they need, understand the information they find, and use this information for their health-related needs. So the Fotonovela is an example of this, and it could be seen through the word usage. We eliminated medical jargon and replaced by using common words. And an example of this is using the word coyunturas instead of the medical term articulaciones, which means joint in English, and by accompanying images with words throughout the Fotonovela. So there are some cultural and linguistic challenges that we face here at AgrAbility. The first one are language barriers. We assist individuals who are predominantly Spanish speaking, although we have seen an emergence of workers who speak indigenous languages other than Spanish, so then Spanish becomes their second language. For example, Mam, it's an ancient Mayan dialect, as well as Mixteco. And so we also, here at AgrAbility, we have to respect cultural differences our consumers may have when they come to us. And so these cultural differences may be belief, customs, and norms that are part of their everyday lives. And so two of the points that I like to highlight on this slide is disability. Sometimes our consumers come to us and they are ashamed of being disabled or having someone in their family who is disabled. So sometimes it makes it difficult to access these individuals because they don't share their disability with friends or other agencies who might want to give them a hand. And also education, minimal education, as Martha mentioned, 3rd through 6th grade level, which then affects their illiteracy and low literacy levels. So some of our consumers are illiterate. They're not able to read or write. They sign documents by simply just writing their initials or an X. And our low literate consumers have limited reading and writing abilities. Due to their low education level, their understanding is basic, not complex, and they need assistance from others to read materials to them. So there's a couple of steps that we take care at AgrAbility to outreach to our low and non-literate Spanish-speaking consumers. So the first step is reading documents out loud to them. Number 2, we restate what was said in the document. So although the documents are translated in Spanish, we have to apply simple language strategy, minimizing complexity of words when we read documents to them. Number 3, we ask them to repeat what was said. So this is the opportunity that an outreach worker may take to ask the consumer a question and just quiz them to see if they're comprehending what you're telling them. And number 4, you ask if they have any questions. Although they may not have questions at that moment, they'll usually have something in mind, and then they'll give you a call with any questions they may have. And number 5, we always have to summarize next steps with them so that they know what's going to happen from here on out. Although we verbally present this information in Spanish, our non-literate consumers trust everything we tell them. And they don't review the information at that time that we're there with them, especially if they can't read. So our non-literate consumers may not have someone around the household that could help them review the information when we leave. So it's really important that we follow up with these individuals. In regards to health literacy and our consumers, health literacy is a tool that our consumers can use to find and understand basic health information, so they can make the appropriate decisions about their own health needs. And these are skills that any individual needs to navigate the rehab and health systems. And so we build our program capacity, and here at AgrAbility we take some steps towards improving our health literacy. The first one, we accompany our consumer to doctor, rehab, workers' comp, and medical appointments, being there with our consumer as an advocate. And also, especially if this is the first time they're navigating through the health system, it's really important that we're there to accompany them. Also, by searching for adult literacy programs available for consumers, just looking for adult literacy programs that might be offered in their communities, and also by conducting our bilingual outreach, so by translating and offering our interpretation services to our consumers free of charge. And now I will turn it over to Esmeralda, and she'll speak to you about how we reach to our migrant and seasonal consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Hi, my name is Esmeralda Mandujano, and I am a bilingual outreach representative at the California AgrAbility program, and today I will be focusing on the work that AgrAbility does to outreach to migrant and seasonal farm workers. Agricultural workers can be very difficult to reach. There are more than 3 million migrant and seasonal farm workers in the U.S. Most of them were born in Mexico, and this supports the fact that 78% of farm workers are immigrants. 61% live below poverty level, and despite this, less than 1% receive any sort of cash aid. And this supports the fact that that farm workers have a very similar philosophy to that of farmer. They work for what they have, and meaning that in their median family income is about $10,000, which is fairly low, and their main source of income is farming. And it is very difficult to reach and communicate with this population often, because oftentimes they even have limited Spanish speaking skills. and they speak in other dialects. Like Crystal mentioned earlier, we have some consumers that speak in Hmong. And many workers still follow the 3 migrant streams depicted in the slide because they are following the seasons of agriculture for work. They have found we have found that many of them move up to 13 times a year, and 70% of workers live permanently in the U.S., and they are mainly concentrated in the southwestern region of the United States, which is depicted by this blue circle. And the reason why they are moving around so much is because they are following the seasons of agriculture for work. And there are similarities and differences between seasonal and migrant workers. A migrant worker, by federal law definition, travels at least 50 miles away from their permanent residence to work, and a seasonal worker is one who has employment in a community where he or she is a permanent resident of. And because it is very unlikely for a farm worker to look for help, as outreach representatives, we must go to them. We reach workers in migrant camps and housing centers, which are usually located on the outskirts of towns and in isolated areas. And these house workers not only from other countries, but also from other states. And California has 24 migrant camp centers that are run by the state, which we can see in this map. And from what we understand, other states also have private licensed camps and housing centers. And Michigan, for example, has 807 private licensed camps. And because AgrAbility attends and sponsors community events, such as health fairs, these are golden opportunities to meet farmers, especially those with chronic diseases, because health events are often the only time where these individuals receive any sort of medical attention. And because 64% of migrant households have children living in them, events that are targeted towards children, such as children health fairs, are golden opportunities to meet the farm worker. And other venues to create contact are local community fairs and commodity festivals. And at AgrAbility, we also network with migrant clinics and community organizations to co-sponsor other health educational events. And we have partnered with organizations like the Health Education Council to put on health fairs. And here you can see a couple of the displays that we have had at these events. And AgrAbility also produces materials to promote the program among the Spanish-speaking farming population. And these are a couple of posters and postcards that we use in this. And AgrAbility also produces and disseminates Spanish educational material, like the Fotonovela and their newsletters, which are translated into simple Spanish. And we also distribute other information like heat stress cards and heat stress books, so they can be informed. And we develop strong collaborations with many agencies like Vogue, Rehab, and the Migrant Clinicians Network, and they serve as a supplemental connection to maintaining communication with consumers, because farm workers tend to have very long work days. Sometimes they work 10 to 12 hours a day, so it is very difficult to establish contact with them. And AgrAbility also conducts Spanish educational trainings on important topics for the Latino farm working community. Some of these topics are arthritis and other chronic conditions such as diabetes. And these trainings are conducted at camps and community centers, among other venues. Again, remember, here emphasizing that we must go to the farm workers. And California also produces Spanish-speaking public service announcements, and farm workers tend to be radio listeners as they drive or ride to work, while they're at work and during their lunch breaks. And radio is a type of liaison between their old life in Mexico and their new life in the United States. And research has actually proven that farm workers want to learn. They tend to actively speak about information they consider important with others who may or may not be radio listeners, consequently creating a second audience. And here again we see the importance of word of mouth. And in summary, we have 10 strategies in reaching migrant and seasonal workers. Number 1, outreach where workers live, work, access service, and socialize. Go to them. Remember, they might not be able to come to you. and develop relationships and credibility within migrant community over time. Number 3, develop materials that are culturally sensitive and accessible to all literacy and educational levels. Number 4, establish and or participate in community task forces, networking, again emphasizing. Number 5, know the rights and resources available to the migrant community. Number 6, raise the awareness about the risk of injuries. Number 7, cultivate relationships with employers and contractors of workers. Number 8, develop culturally competent outreach, prevention, and advocacy services. Number 9, recognize and strive to understand the diversity within the culture and the unique experiences of individuals. And number 10, work with your colleagues to bridge gaps in services for the migrant community. Remember to keep in mind your goal, which is to ensure the safety of farm workers, and one of the best ways to do that is to keep them informed. Remember that teamwork is very important. I will now turn it back to Paul Jones. Thank you.
Thank you to all the California staff that shared that excellent information, and also for Amber, talking about the fotonovela. I also wanted to share a little bit about some of the things that have been going on through the Missouri AgrAbility Project and their partnership with the Missouri Arthritis Rehabilitation Research and Training Center, also known as MARTEC, and the National Center for Farm Worker Health. Those organizations joined together to work with some of the Latino lay health workers, known as Promotores du Salud. And so I want to share just a bit of what they've been working on. We had so many presenters that we didn't feel like we could have a whole nother section from the Missouri team, so that's why I'm just sharing kind of an outline, and I'll have some contact information at the end if you would like to learn more about what they're doing. The lay health workers, the promotores, have been effective in sharing health information with their communities for quite a long time. This slide indicates that they've been doing it around the world since the 1900s, and particularly since the 1950s here in the United States. Many of you may be familiar with the promotores already, but they're members of the Latino community that share a variety of health information with members of their community. It could be related to disease or injury prevention or just healthy living. They also help members of their community to access the formal health services system. It may be, helping them get to a doctor or to a hospital, or finding out information from AgrAbility or from arthritis or diabetes foundations or other organizations such as that. Now, the group from Missouri and also from the National Center for Farm Worker Health believed that the promotores were excellent candidates for sharing information about arthritis with migrant and seasonal farm workers, partly because they had already been doing that type of thing in previous types of health initiatives. So their strategy was to hold some focus groups initially, and they held those in Texas and Missouri, and part of their goal was to determine what method would be most beneficial for sharing information, particularly about arthritis, through the promotores to the migrant and seasonal health workers. As a result, they developed a curriculum/flip chart that could be used by the promotores when they work with migrant and seasonal farm workers, specifically on arthritis, and it's called Let's Talk About Arthritis. So it includes not only a strong pictorial element that we've already mentioned is important for working with this population, but you also have the personal contact with the promotora, somebody they probably already know and who can answer questions. And so they've developed this particular strategy, and I believe I have some contact information if you would like more information about that and how to obtain one. Karen Funkenbush is the individual that provided me with these slides, so that's who I've listed here. I know Willard Downs is also the PI of the Missouri AgrAbility project, and I'm sure he would be glad to talk with you. His contact information is on the AgrAbility website. And so if you'd like to either contact Willard or Karen, Karen's particular information is here with her email and also the 800 number for the Missouri AgrAbility project. At this time, I would like to transition into our question and answer period. Some of you have already typed in a couple of questions for our presenters. Feel free to go ahead and submit other questions through the chat window. I'll also transition to our question and answer screen. If you would like to call the 800 number, you are welcome to do that and enter that Meet Me code that's listed on your screen, and we will go ahead and activate that line now. And while we're doing that, I'd like to go ahead and do a few poll questions quickly. Okay, our first poll question just asks about your professional affiliation. If you could go ahead and mark what type of organization you work with, that would be helpful to us. Just click that on your screen. It should register on the poll. Thank you for going ahead and for those that have already responded. Some of them, there may be some overlap. If you work for both a farm worker organization and a state and federal government, simply choose the one that's most appropriate. Okay, thank you for responding to that poll. Our next question involves the information that was presented during the session. It simply asks whether the information presented during the session was valuable and met your expectations. So if you could go ahead and signify your preference, your opinion on that. We may be having some trouble with our 800 line, so if you would go ahead and type in any questions into the chat room, that would probably be the best method at this point. We'll see if we can get that line open. Our third question involves the technology that was used during the session. If you could indicate whether you felt that the technology was effective and usable, we'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you for responding. Our final question just indicates whether you believe you would attend another session in this series based on today's session. Okay. Thank you for participating in the poll. I will now turn it over to Cliff Raz, who will post some of the questions that have been sent through the chat window, and I will deactivate my camera, and whoever is most appropriate for answering that question can go ahead and activate theirs. Okay, I'm back on again for the first question. Yes, the PowerPoint will be posted along with the webinar archive on www.agrability.org, and so you should be able to download that and print it. Hopefully we'll be able to get that archive posted within the next 24 hours. Usually it doesn't take too long. I think the next question is Amber, so I will let her move in front of the camera.
Okay, the question is, does the Fotonovela include information about assistive technology like daily living aids to help with arthritis? The answer is yes, very briefly. When Angelo is in the doctor's office, the nurse practitioner does discuss with him some things that he can do in his daily home and work life to make very simple modifications to adjust for his pain. In addition to that, at the end of the novella, where it lists the tips for healthy living and the 12 healthy living aspects, it also goes into a few of the very simple basic modifications that can be made. Things like padded handles, using longer handles, carts and dollies to transport and carry, things that would be very easy for anyone to be able to adapt into their work and their home lifestyle. It does not, however, go into any further type of assistive technology that would then require more of a visit with an occupational therapist or with somebody who would be able to recommend a more, I guess, just something, an assistive technology device that would need a little bit more recommendation behind it than something they could do every day in their daily life. But it does go into some assistive technology. I don't know who the next. We might want to mention something about it being.
The next question talks about the main points to develop a fotonovela. I'll try to respond a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to the California group. As I briefly shared, in terms of the steps for doing that, first, of course, you need to know what message you ultimately want to convey. And in our case, it was basic arthritis information to this population. For your organizations, it may be heat stroke, or it could be possibly how to access social services, but clearly defining what type of matter you want to communicate. And then, again, part of the process was determining a story in which to tell that. So we developed a script in collaboration with the other partners. And perhaps Martha and the California group could talk a little bit about the process of translation and how important various readings of that were. And then another point would be, I guess, why it's important to do that. They've already spoken a little bit about that, but maybe they could reiterate a little bit more on that. So I'll turn it over to the California group.
Yeah, I mean, like Paul said, you have to start with your initial topic. I mean, steps have to include that you really have to have a storyline. If you're using the novella, it has to be a story. And you know what I really suggest is, like, there are a lot of fotonovelas out there. There's one on cancer, there's some on HIV, there are some that aren't even health related at all. It's like they're actually like a little soap opera book. The steps in, once you get your storyline down and you get your Spanish language translation down and you've had all your reviewers look at it, and you really need to pre-test it. You need to go out and take your pictures to have the images that you're going to portray in each frame. It's an extended process, actually. In pre-testing and checking with your audience, we use focus groups, and we also take it out in the field and talk to individual workers to review at each stage of the game. And they may take exception to what somebody's wearing. or they may take exception to the bins that the produce is being carried from the field to the truck in. Everything has to apply to them. One thing that I will mention, and I don't have the resource off the top of my head, there is a manual type publication that is available on the internet, and I'm not sure about the title, but it has to do with producing fotonovelas. And I'm not sure, I think Paul might have used that. There's also programs, computer programs that help you create the actual format of the fotonovela. Crystal and Esme, did I leave anything out? They're shaking their heads no. Okay, signing off. Okay, I'm not sure, what resource center you are or where you're located, but California AgrAbility covers the entire state. What I suggest you do is contact me directly. My phone number is, I'll give you our 800 number, is 800-477-6129. And we can talk about collaborating on some of the activities that you might want to incorporate in your programs at the center. We have bilingual staff, and we have a lot of training and outreach activities that we do throughout the year. Signing off. What's going on?
The next question asks about best practices for disability organizations who want to reach out to these populations. I'm sure Cal AgrAbility will have some input on that, but from our perspective, we're also the headquarters for the Indiana AgrAbility project, and I think as a disability organization, one of the things we realized was that we simply did not have expertise on our staff to be able to reach out to this population ourselves. So in our case, we partnered with another organization that did specialize. In our case, that was Transition Resources Corporation, which is part of the Telemon Corporation, that focuses on training for migrant and seasonal farm workers. So we were able to form a collaborative relationship with them, and they're kind of our outreach avenue for this particular group. So that's one strategy, is simply to recognize that you may not have that ability, but I would recommend collaborating with organizations that are already working with this type of group. And that's in fact what we've done with working with California AgrAbility. We knew that we did not have the expertise to be able to produce a Spanish resource, at least compared to what we knew they would be able to do. So again, partnerships I think are important. Before I turn it over to Martha, I will just, she mentioned a resource. I just did a quick web search in terms of Fotonovela, so I'll put a website up that might be helpful to you in terms of if you're interested in doing a fotonovela, you might want to check that website, and I'll turn it back over to Martha for her comments on the question about best practices.
Well, rather than summarizing, I think Esmeralda really covered most of the best practices that we use, that we have been successful in reaching this population. And they're by no means the only steps that you can take in reaching the population. As she and Crystal mentioned, the migrant and seasonal farm worker population is just difficult to reach, period. And including especially those who are disabled. There are many reasons why, if a farm worker is injured, that they don't come forward at all. And one big reason is that they're afraid they're going to lose their job. So some of the best practices that we use under those circumstances, like Esmeralda said, is like we have to go to them. Obviously, they have to identify themselves in some way, but we make ourselves present in every venue that we possibly can to give them those opportunities. And that includes going to their towns and their communities, to events that are sponsored by health organizations because they and their families tend to go there. We also immediately follow up with any phone calls that we may get on their behalf. And, you know, obviously our staff has got to be bilingual, and it's really helpful that they're bicultural because they understand the issues of how disability is handled within families. I urge you to go over the 10 strategies on the PowerPoint that Esmeralda presented, and that will be really helpful. Also, since you're obviously from California, I'm not sure if you're the AT Network. We've worked with the AT Network and the California Center for Independent Living Centers over these past years. So please call us. Thank you.
And while Cliff's putting up the last question, I will get the contact information for California AgrAbility and put that up along with the National AgrAbility toll-free number. We've already got the website, but I'll get that for California and turn this one over to Martha.
Okay. We have had many of our consumers, farm worker consumers, who have had vision problems. One of the most prevalent problems, as many of you in the healthcare field know, is pterygium. We do our best to help these folks find either the assistive technologies that they need. We've actually helped one woman find eyeglasses. But the thing is, since AgrAbility cannot support our consumers by giving money or buying things for them, it's finding resources to help them obtain it. So that's where the difficulty comes in. And that's where we seek out the assistance of other agencies. That is really, we rely on them a lot. But yes, we have had folks that have come in with those problems, and I think we've successfully assisted them in finding either the services they need or the AT that they need. You know, that's a very general question, so it's, you know, if you have folks that have those problems, please give them our phone number. Thank you.
Okay, I've just put the California AgrAbility website and toll-free number, and I will put the National AgrAbility up. And I want to thank everyone for participating. Again, we will be archiving this soon. If you have other questions beyond what we were able to share today, please feel free to email us at agrability@agrability.org, the same website you registered on. And I'll make sure I get our phone number right. There we go. We will be having another webinar in approximately 6 months. At this point, our anticipated topic is emergency preparedness for people with disabilities. So if you're involved in that area, please, we'll be sending out an announcement to all those that have participated in past webinars. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and also for all of our presenters, Amber and Martha, Esmeralda, and Crystal, and also from Missouri AgrAbility for providing us with some information about what they're doing there. At this point, I'll sign off and wish you a good afternoon.